Hello and welcome to another Doctor's Assistant 1 video, and today I'm doing my top 3 Davroses, so sort of actors who have played Davros over the years, and that, so yeah, I mean, to be fair, there's not that many people who have played Davros, I don't think, and that, so, and I mean, yeah, so I'll start off with, obviously, number 3, being the person who played Davros in this story, Genesis of the Daleks. Now, I don't actually know the name of the person, so it's clearly because I'm not a proper Doctor Who fan, clearly. But yeah, so sorry about that. But I mean, I have to admit, like, say, Neil Gaiman said about the first Doctor, he tweeted out once upon a time, like, you know, the first Doctor was brilliant, but he could never be wrong, in the sense that no one could be wrong doing the role because there was never, you know, the Doctor hadn't been discovered yet. There was no real sort of blueprint as to who the Doctor was, so anyone could have been that part, because anyone could make it whatever they wanted to, because, as I say, there wasn't a blueprint. And I'd say that about Davros in this story. There wasn't really a blueprint as to who Davros was. You know, besides being the creator of the Daleks, you know, if the person who played Davros in this story really wanted to, he could have added a little bit of humour if needs be. You know, obviously it would be rather contradictory to this very, very dark and depressing story being Genesis of the Daleks, but, you know, if he really wanted to, he could have, you know, he could have brought a bit more human aspect to his character a little bit, you know, and made him a little bit more of an innocent character. You know, he could have done any number of things, and it'd have been right, because he was the first and original Davros, you know. And I think he gave such a chilling and dark and eerie performance, and I think considering the effects and the rubber mask that he had, and that, I think he played it superbly. He did the best he could do with what he had, basically. And, you know, obviously this is just part of Doctor Who history now, Genesis of the Daleks. I know a lot of people think it's overrated, which is fair enough and understandable, but I think more than anything what makes it superb is this guy's performance, and that. I want to say his name's Michael Wisher, but I don't think it is. But anyway, but yeah, I think he gave such a wonderfully eerie and dark and sort of, yeah, like just sadistic, but yet what makes him even more scary is that he truly believes what he's doing is right, but also he only ever raised his voice at most 3 times from what I remember. 2 or 3 times, 3 times at most in Genesis of the Daleks. So although he was unhinged, he was in control. And when you think of someone who's in control, you don't think of someone who's mentally unstable. But I think what makes him more scary is the fact that you do know that he'll snap eventually, but you don't know when, and that makes you unsettled. So I think that, you know, Genesis, or the guy who plays Davros in Genesis of the Daleks is at number 3. Primarily because, you know, I do have nostalgia for his performance, because actually, surprisingly enough, although I'm an advocate of the new series and started watching the new series first, before the classic series, I got this and Earthshock, first 2 classic series DVDs and or episodes I ever got were those 2, and I got this sort of around series 3 of the new series, so I'd watched this and or seen his performance before Julian Bleach's, so, but it's in number 3 because I think primarily my only criticism or gripe that I can say about this guy is that obviously he only had this, this rendition of Davros. I would have liked to see if he would have still been able to really sort of make a bad script or a less good script than Genesis, so for example Destiny of the Daleks, if he would have been able to make that performance or that story better with his performance, and then if so, I'd have put him higher on the list. But also, yeah, he only has the one story, so he's only Davros for literally those 6 parts of that one episode, so that's why I can't, give him a higher rating in terms as phenomenal as he is. In our number 2, it's obviously Terry Malloy as Davros in pretty much 90%, pretty much all of the audios, which would be 100%, not 90, but, you know, because I can do maths. But he also played, I think, he was first introduced in Resurrection of the Daleks and that, and then continued on through the 80s with Revelation, Remembrance, and all the audios, you know, and he is just superb, you know, he plays it to a T, you know, he really cares about the character, and purely from a, you know, how many, you know, sort of Davroses he has done, or how many times he's played Davros, he would be number 1 purely from that, because the amount he's done is more than anyone, really. So, and I think you don't keep going back to a character and doing a character, or being that character, if you don't care for that character. You know, you wouldn't ask Tom Baker, oh, so did you enjoy playing the part of the Doctor? Well, because obviously he did. Why else would he have done it for 7 years? You know, you know, and he just adds so much depth and layer, and, you know, just so much intrigue and eeriness to Davros. You know, he adds layers to Davros because he cares, really. He cares about this character, and he knows the fans care about this character, so he adds as much depth to the character as he can, you know, with both his voice and with his physical sort of appearance in the show, you know. Granted, as Davros went on, spoiler alert, but in the show he started becoming less of an actual person, and, you know, by Remembrance he's literally just about, like, you know, upper torso, shoulders and a head, essentially. So, but yeah, audios, Terry Malloy really is the one to go to, because he's in Davros, he's in Terra Firma, he's in Curse of Davros, and pretty much every other Davros-related release, which is brilliant, because Terry Malloy, again, is brilliant. But he's number 2. Very much a tied number 1, really. The only reason why I've got number 1 being Julian Bleach at number 1 is because, you know, as much as I said before, I saw the Genesis of the Daleks Davros first, I think the new series really sort of reinvented and reinvigorated and redesigned and reintroduced Davros to a whole new generation, myself included in that, you know, and added a bunch more sort of, well, not so much depth, but much more sort of purpose and a new drive, you know. He'd just come out of the Time War, or we're led to believe he's just sort of come out of the Time War, and survived the Time War. He's made all these new Daleks from his flesh, which is just creepy, you know, when he opens the bit of his person, you know, and I love the design of his chair, of his person, you know, completely love it, you know. And Julian Bleach, I think, at some point later down the line should hopefully, I hope he does one day, do Davros in the audios, because he is Davros to me. He's superb in the role. I mean, unlike, say, the guy who played the Genesis of the Daleks, Davros, he's been in both, you know, not too good a story, really. I think part 1 of the Series 4 one that he was in sort of was decent for a Dalek story, and then the second one was probably the better Davros story. And then I'd say, you know, in Witches Familiar, or Magician's Apprentice, which is Familiar, he gives a phenomenal performance in that, you know, of just sort of being like, you know, this pure innocent. We get almost a glimpse of how he was in Davros from what I grasp of what he's supposed to be like in Davros, and I think, you know, to get that from an actor and or person who's only played the role previously 2 times in the new series, you know, he's only played the part, well, 4 times, or maybe twice, depending on how you count the 2-parter, but 2 2-parters, so 4 episodes / or 4 parts, 2 stories, but yeah, or 1 story each, so yeah, 2 stories, episodes. But yeah, he gives so much depth and layer and sort of humility to the role, and sort of, yeah, believability that he is just this sort of, you know, shriveled up, sort of dying, decaying person, really, you know, which is something I think you don't really get in Genesis. In Genesis, he's this megalomaniac, this dictator, and it's the same in sort of the Series 4 finale, which is fine, don't get me wrong, that is Davros, but it's also nice to see the other side of him, where he's more sort of vulnerable emotionally, and you get this sort of idea that actually, beyond the wheelchair and the decrepit old face that's been, you know, destroyed by years of radiation poisoning, he is just a person who wanted his people to survive, essentially, you know. And again, I think Julian Bleach is phenomenal, and I think they shouldn't get rid of him anytime soon, as I am worried they're going to do that with, like, how they did with Rassilon, where they just, one minute had Timothy Dalton, and then next minute had Donald Sumter, and there was no real sort of link as to how that happened, you know, it just happened, and I would really hate for that to happen with Davros and or Julian Bleach. I think he should, as I say, stay on for the next Doctor and or for the foreseeable future personally. But yeah, that's been my top 3 Davroses. Thanks for watching, comment, rate and subscribe. And I mean, to be fair, they're all really good and they're all in the different ways, and I really do, again, I really do like Terry Malloy, I really like Julian Bleach, and I really like the guy who played Davros in Genesis, for different reasons, essentially, much like with all the renditions and or iterations of, you know, the Doctor. So, thanks for watching, comment, rate and subscribe.